budget deliberations. Thank you all for making the effort to be here this night. I think we'll quickly go around the table, and because there's a few new faces, and once again introduce ourselves and the community we represent. I'm Bob Vale. I'm from the town of Cumberland.
Sarah McNevich, City of Portland District Councilor. Connie Justice, it says Carolyn, but I go by Connie, New Gloucester Select Board.
Tim Thompson, Town Councilor from Cape Elizabeth.
Brianna Gerson, Assistant County Manager.
Jim Gailey, County Manager.
Teresa Grover, Finance Director.
Alyssa Johnson, Budget and Finance Manager.
Patty Smith, County Commissioner.
John Anderson, do I go next or are we going this way?
Well, again, I'm Michael Durkin. I'm the Director of Emergency Management, Cumberland County.
Melinda Cabral-Dyer, the Director of 911.
Jessica Spalding, the Register of Deeds.
Lisa Kelly from the Cumberland County Extension Association.
I'm Sarah Davenport from the Cumberland County Extension.
And I'm Jim Schmidt from the Cumberland County Extension System.
I'm Jackie Sartoris, the District Attorney of Cumberland County.
I'm John Anderson, Scarborough.
Karen Orenstein from Yarmouth.
All right, great. Welcome, everybody. You have your agenda in front of you. We have approval of minutes, but I think we're going to delay that because if I'm mistaken, I didn't see them.
Right, the minutes are about 95% done. We just needed to go back and double check a few of the minute comments to the video. And because of the holiday, we just didn't circle back around with it. So we will catch up with you on the next meeting for them.
Okay, great. So we have a number of presentations here tonight, and I think if we want to get through this in a timely fashion, I'm going to hand this over to Jim Gailey and take it from there.
Great. First up this evening, we have Jessica Spalding. Jessica is the Register of Deeds for Cumberland County.
You want me?
Yeah.
Okay.
And the cable should be right there. Do you have PowerPoint, Jessica?
I do not, if that's okay.
Perfect.
Okay. All right.
Jessica is has a budget of a 5.9% increase for FY '27. And one thing that Jessica is going to be happy to report out is a new fee schedule set by state statute in the last legislative session. So without stealing all of her thunder, I will pass the mic over to her.
Thank you. So as Jim said, our registry fees got approved to start January 1st. We've increased them. We've not had an increase since 2011, so it's quite a long time. So we moved away from a per page, per name, per reference fee schedule, which was a little confusing to submitters, especially out-of-state submitters, to a flat fee schedule. So now municipalities have one flat fee, and then all other submitters have a standard fee. And part of that is that the registry also gets a $5 surcharge per document from the normal submitting, and that is for restoration and preservation of our records. So some of the projects that the registry does is we restore some of our older records, some of our plans that are on old linen, restoring books, things like that. So the Registry Association was very excited to get this passed, not only to increase revenue for the counties, but also to decrease the frustration that we have with submitters. I think we were one of the only states in New England that were a per page or per name, and it created a lot of confusion with out-of-state submitters who were sending us documents and we had to reject them. So we were pretty excited to move to this flat fee schedule. So with that, based on our 2024 figures, I worked on some calculations, and it was about a 28% increase that we would see in our income for our recording fees. Do I just keep talking? Sorry, this is my first one, so.
Keep going.
You're the first presenter too. Good job. You're the first one too, Justin. Yeah.
Okay, good. So one of the other changes was the state did increase transfer tax for properties that are over $1 million. So that changed in in November 1st. So the county is seeing a little bit of increased revenue from transfer tax. For any purchases over $1 million, the fee goes up from $4.40 per thousand of the sale price to now the portion over $1 million is $12. So we have seen quite a bit of revenue, especially for Cumberland County. We do have a lot of commercial properties, so that is going to create a bit of a revenue increase for us. Based on the 2024 sales, I calculated it to be about a 27% increase. And we've been running pretty strong with transfer tax. That hasn't dipped down. That's really, I think, been pretty level, surprisingly. So we're pretty excited about those fees. Part of that is that the state, we used to be able to keep 10% for acting as the state's agent. The state also did decrease that to 9.2% for 2 years. I don't see that they're gonna give us back our 0.8%, unfortunately, so I'm sure we're gonna stay at the 9.2 going forward. But the county's still seeing an increase in revenue due to that increased transfer tax.
What was the 0.8% going to?
It was going to fund housing, for affordable housing in Maine. So that was their whole, the whole reasoning behind increasing the transfer tax, but also taking away the county's 0.8%.
Can we ask questions as you go along? Or,
Absolutely, please do, because I don't want to just keep talking.
year sales fairly consistent, is up or down?
I think that we've been fairly consistent. 2020 and 2020 and 2021 during COVID, the Registry of Deeds were averaging about 90 to 100,000 documents a year. Right now, we are at about 54,000, so we have seen a decrease, but the revenue we have not seen a decrease in. So I think that attributes to the housing market. Houses, we're still seeing sell over, I'm not a real estate agent, but we're still seeing them sell over asking price. So we've been pretty steady. It was pretty intense during COVID.
Do your revenues fully cover the costs of your operations?
Yes, and then some.
So even though you have a 5.9% budget increase, you're fully covered partially because of these new revenues that are coming in?
Karen, you got a question?
On the cover sheet of the Registry of Deeds budget materials, there's a box called statistics, and it references the transfer tax to the state at 90%. Should that now be?
Yeah, it should be 90, yeah, 90.8.
Okay. At some point, we just get an updated version?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay. Was the 8.2% taken into account in the figures that you worked on as your estimates? Revenue?
I'm sorry, can you?
Sorry. It's 9.2%, is it a 10% holdback?
Yes.
That was taken into account?
Yes, it was.
Okay, great.
Go ahead.
Sorry.
Can you talk about number of staff and your daily operations that you see?
Sure. So currently we have myself as a register, we have a deputy register, and we have 4 clerks. We do have a position that we have talked about that is not currently filled. We decided in 2023, when we saw a dip in numbers, not to fill that position. We had changed some things in the office to make them, I think, runs more smoothly and efficiently, and we just didn't see the need for it when we're going from recording 100,000 documents to 54,000 documents. We also have seen a huge increase in electronic recordings, so rather than having a line out the registry door like we used to, people can actually submit from their offices, from their homes. So our e-recorded percentage for our documents is about 72%. which is huge. So we're seeing a lot less paper. So the electronic recordings are way more efficient. There's no booking and paging each page anymore. It's all comes through electronically, we view it, it saves electronically, and off it goes. Whereas opposed to a paper document, we are physically touching that paper, which does take more time. So everything is available online in our office. So when I first started at the registry 10 years ago, we used to have title abstractors who were doing research for closings in our office. They pretended like it was their office. There was tables and tables of abstractors who would come in to look at our books. Now in our office is everything's online. We do have the books available if people do want to come in, but it's very rare that anybody asks for those old books. They're in a great storage facility that the county so generously provided to us in our new office. So our space for customers is much smaller, but we're not seeing the volume of walk-in customers like we used to.
So I heard you say that you have the register, deputy register, and 4 clerks?
4 clerks currently, yes, there's 6
Is
of
that
us.
5?
We do, because we have the frozen position, we have left that on there.
So what does that mean in terms of a budget for staffing?
That position's been carried from year to year because we're looking not to fill it because we're thinking that the interest rates were gonna go down. When interest rates go down, they get very busy because the market shifts. And over the last 2 years, interest rates have been high, but as we've been seeing the market the interest rates go down, we have to be prepared to adjust pretty quick on staffing.
Are you saying that you're holding the position and the potential salary for it in case it's needed?
Yes.
Is that, I just don't know if it's common, given the fluctuation to your point, would it actually have to be an FTE or could it be a contractor that could come in? And would there be any savings there if it was with a contractor versus a full-time equivalent?
Sure. Our job is very meticulous, and I would be hesitant to just bring in a contractor or maybe a temp agency. It does take about 6 months to a year for somebody to be fully trained at the registry. So to just set somebody maybe from a contractor or from a temp agency on our computers when we are to safeguard the county's history is a little unsettling to me as a Register of Deeds. I don't want to just send somebody out there who could negatively affect our documents without knowing how to properly do the job.
And have you set aside a full salary for the year for this frozen vacancy?
Excuse me?
Is there a full salary set aside for the full year for the frozen vacancy?
In general, what's that salary about? Is it around entry level?
It's entry level. I don't know off the top of my head what we have it set at. I can get you that
It
information.
hasn't increased.
It hasn't, no. I think we've left it at where that person.
That would be a hard thing for me to do in my town. And I have to represent them when I come here.
So what happens, just to follow up with that, like when that money isn't expensed, like what does that go to on the county's budget? Does it go to a different type of reserve or does it go back to, like, I'm just curious, like, I know in our towns, like it would go into our unassigned fund balance, which is a good, yeah, which is a good thing sometimes, but what happens at the county level? Okay.
Anybody else got anything? Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Next up this evening, we have Michael Durkin. Michael is the Director of Emergency Management for Cumberland County. And the floor is yours, Michael.
Let's see, if technology allows me. Got my way at the back of the room. And say, what did I do wrong? What did I do wrong?
I need which cable are you plugging in? Bryson, is that panel on over there?
The TV should be up. I think I got it.
There you go.
Thank you, I appreciate it. As Jim said, I'm Michael Durkin. I'll briefly present on emergency management. Our budget is largely unchanged from last year, so I'm going to keep most of it to kind of the cover page, but if you want to dig in anywhere, feel free to ask any questions, let me know. The kind of the bottom line up front, our budget is just over $733,000 to actually run county EMA. Out of that, 57% comes from county fund, from general funds, and then 43% of that funding is actually federal grants. And those grants don't have a match, thankfully. Well, they have a match, but as you can see, it's more than made up for the county general fund. So that puts the actual amount at roughly $381,000. And I say roughly only because 2 federal grant years actually match 1 county year. They kind of overlap a little bit, so those percentages can wobble just a little bit here and there because I can't predict how much the next grant will be for. So it could be 42%, it could be 43%, it could be 44% at the end of the day. With that money, we have, you can see about 85% of our funding goes directly towards staffing. We have 7 staff. We spend 10% of that money on our operations budget, and then 5% of that is what's classified as capital. In our case, capital funding is actually direct payments to support the 2 hazmat teams, one in Portland and one in South Portland. So that capital funding isn't actually county funds that are used by me or my agency. It's actually funding that goes to support those hazmat teams, and they use it for different pieces of equipment. They use it for physicals for the firefighters. They use it for different things to maintain those 2 hazmat teams because those teams serve county-wide. They don't just serve within city limits. So that 5% is not necessarily mine. I don't think of it that way. A few changes. This year you'll see based on last year's budget, we have a 7.2% staffing increase. That's pretty on par with the rest of the county departments. I think it's almost identical to Deeds. Our operations budget is decreasing by about $13,000, which is about 21%. That's because as we as an agency moved from our facility in Windham into this facility in Northport, our utilities are moving out of my budget and into the facilities budget. So there are hidden in that decrease a few small increases. I think we asked for $500 more for gasoline to reflect what we're actually spending on gas. And I think it was about $1,000 more on radio repair. Now that we're in this building, we have to maintain a radio room here in addition to the one in Windham. So there's a tiny increase for that. Compared to last year, there's a decrease of $3,000 in that capital. That's not a decrease in the money going to the hazmat teams. That's staying stable. That's still $30,000, and that was $30,000 last year. But we had an actual capital expense for my agency of about $3,000 last year, and that was to outfit the new emergency operations center in this new building. That's done, so we won't be asking for that. So currently, the only thing left in that capital line item is those hazmat funds, and there's nothing for my agency essentially in it. We also track a lot of long-term changes because we are an organization that's reliant on grants. So I figured I'd throw a couple of those out there and see if they spark interest or conversation. I don't foresee these as things that's necessarily going to impact this proposed budget, but I could see it in future year budgets. So I figure I'll throw it out there and see if there's any interest in discussing it. FEMA's restructuring, as you probably heard on the news, that could impact our operations pretty significantly. And our FEMA revenues, that 43% that has been very, very stable, could become more volatile. I put here, these are the different awards for the various fiscal years. These are grant fiscal years, so they don't line up perfectly with county fiscal years. But you can see we took that one hit between FY23 and FY24, and otherwise the grant is remarkably stable. It grows a little bit over time, and it funds our operations, and it's great. And there's very rarely hits like that. We've been tracking for maybe the past 6 to 9 months, different efforts to change these grants. There's talk of eliminating them completely, but that doesn't happen. There's talk of putting new conditions on them. There's lawsuits that then happen when they try to put conditions on them. All the lawsuits have now been resolved in our favor. And by that, I mean the grant this year is essentially running as it did last year, which is what we want. We like that stability. But I can't guarantee for FY '26 that number would stay at 320,000. That's up to Congress. It could go up, it could go down, it could shift a great deal. So our short-term revenues in that sense are stable in that, and by short-term, I mean through this budget year. We should have the contract as a county to see those funds coming in. I was told by the end of this week, which means probably by the end of next week. But long-term, those EMA revenues might become a little more volatile over time. What this essentially means for EMA programmatically, because this impacts your towns, is that us as a county will be asked to do more with less, right? If FEMA's not doing something, it's either the county or the state who has to then step in and provide that service. Since we don't yet know exactly what FEMA is saying they won't do, a large part of 2026, and I think a large part of this budget, will be the counties and MEMA figuring out, okay, what's on the plate now and who's gonna take a bite out of it. So we're expecting to have to do more. We're hopeful that the revenue will continue stably. If it does, it'll allow us completely to do that. If not, programmatically, we'll have to get kind of creative with how we do things and what we do. Yeah. But on the whole, in the short term for these purposes, I'm feeling pretty good about it. We'll see how I feel next year.
So when you say they may ask you to do more, like what are the types of services that you're thinking you guys might have to take on that you're not doing today?
So one big thing FEMA does after disasters, they'll come in and they'll open up disaster recovery centers. Mm-hmm. We saw one in Harpswell about 2 years ago, and they throw in anywhere from 15 to 50 different people, and they bring them up from all over the country, and they pay them, and those are the people who go door to door. They have the blue FEMA jackets. It's like you see on CNN. FEMA's indicated, hey, we're not opening those centers anymore. They're too expensive. You need help, call the hotline. That's helpful, that's useful, but a lot of the data is showing those door-to-door visits actually get people. That's what actually gets people to really sign up for services and really do stuff. So stuff like that, if we want a disaster recovery center opened, some centralized hub for survivors of a disaster to get access to resources, it could be us opening it at the county level. We're prepared for that in that we've recently trained up, I think it's 11 volunteers, specifically with the idea they could go door to door. They could help staff this center. They could be trained up for a lot of different things. We have another Academy of Volunteers in the spring coming, so by then maybe we'll have 20 to 25 of them. So we're posturing ourselves to absorb things like that if they come up, but it's a little unclear exactly what's gonna come up. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
It seems to me that you talk about a hazmat team in South Poland and Poland. Why isn't there one in Brunswick? And why is there two down here? We both have airports there. And then I guess if thinking further, kicking the can down the road a bit further, it seems to me that we're more likely to suffer a natural disaster than perhaps a chemical,
Well, it kind of depends. So Brunswick has had a hazmat team historically, and they shut it down about a year or two ago because of funding. All hazmat teams in the state of Maine are actually regional teams. So they're actually state-run teams, and the state puts in money to fund them, and then the fire department essentially sponsors them in that they provide the people and the training, and they actually do all the work. So it's not necessarily, it is Portland's hazmat team, but it's also a state hazmat team, which means a lot of the regulations and the funding sources are piecemealed together from the city of Portland, but also a state fund, and then the state may pull in a different federal grant to do it, and there's a whole kind of mixture of funds that go into funding a hazmat team. The county funds are essentially, we had started doing that years ago as a way to support those struggling hazmat teams because some of these other funding sources were shifting and drying up. So The total $30,000 that we put in is about 15 per team. That's not enough to start a hazmat team, for example. Ultimately, the decision of where to try to start a hazmat team and where to maybe end a hazmat team would be between the individual fire department and the state. It does often come down to funding, though.
Is that a role opportunity for the county to take and, take it away from the municipalities and say this is a role that the county will?
And run a hazmat team?
Right.
There are a couple counties who do that. York County has a county-run hazmat team. It would be a sizable push, I think, because you've got the expertise, the equipment, the staffing already in place at those two departments. So it would be kind of tricky to run it at the county level unless we just ran it administratively. I'm not sure if there would be a net benefit to Portland and South Portland for that, or if it would be more of a paperwork headache for them, honestly. Yeah. The teams now are completely happy running themselves. They're not looking for another level or layer of oversight or anything like that. It's an option. It's definitely doable, but again, they're state teams housed in a fire department, so the county doesn't necessarily have a position to go in and say, no, you answer to me now. I think out of all the counties in Maine, we have the largest hazard profile for different hazardous waste incidents. So I feel pretty happy that we have two teams. Would I love another in Brunswick? Sure, I'll take one in Bridgeton too. I'll take as many as I can get. But I feel very, very happy with the amount of hazmat resources that we have in the county. It's far more than any other county could bring to an incident.
I always look at my municipal bill that the county presents to me, and I say, what can the county do more to the municipalities, that benefit everybody and help reduce cost?
Yeah, so another thing that we do programmatically that impacts hazmat is through what's called the Local Emergency Planning Commission, or LEPC, that's run through County EMA, and they receive some funding from the state essentially to run and coordinate trainings for hazmat. So it's state funding, but administered by my office that trains a lot of those hazmat responders as well. So we do still play kind of a coordinating connective role. Yeah.
So you're saying you could train a firefighter in Harpswell or some other town?
Yep.
So they would be part of a response if it happened?
Yes, now they would not be trained up to that same level, because there's different levels of hazmat response and different kind of qualifications for it. But yeah, absolutely, the LEPC takes requests in from different towns that say, hey, I have 5 people, can we expend funds to get them trained? And we'll organize a class and combine towns if we need to and get them trained. Yeah, absolutely.
And for these two teams that are in Portland and South Portland, the total amount that you're putting in to maintain them is $30,000 with funds coming from other places?
So per this budget, there's $15,000 per team, so $30,000 each. Yep. I don't have the full transparency on how much it would cost to run a hazmat team from the state and all those other sort of factors. But I know my piece of it. 15 each. Yep. Yeah.
Going back to the risk of the federal grants, is there any legislation at the state level reacting to that risk as well, where the state may help with funding in the future?
The state at this point, so there's been, with several changes to these grants, there's been lawsuits from the states. And Maine has been party to several of those lawsuits, not all, but several. They're largely, aside from that, essentially trying to figure out what is the thing they're gonna get asked to do. We were waiting for a long time for the FEMA commission that you may have heard about, and they were gonna present in December and say, come forward, and then they didn't meet, and they didn't say, here's what we're gonna do. And then January 1, they laid off a bunch of those responders. Those are the people with the blue jackets from FEMA. So we're seeing changes at FEMA, but they're not telegraphing those changes. I know the state's having a lot of conversations internally about what they might be asked to do and what they might need to do. We're having conversations with our municipal EMA directors and with a lot of our neighboring counties to figure out, similar to your point, is there something regionally that could exist for all of southern Maine that we could do if we need to? So we're planners in emergency management, so we're trying to plan for the worst, but I don't think there's any legislation yet because there isn't a clear direction yet.
More slides?
I have one other, and it's a little different, but I always wanted to highlight because I never actually get to talk about it. There's no budgetary impact to the documents you have, but I wanted to note these are different grant programs that my office assists towns with getting, and this is what we've received in those grants from last year. Just to show a rough idea of a non-budgetary kind of fiscal impact on the county. The county as a community, not the county as an organization. But I never get to brag about that, so.
Helping others.
This seemed a chance to brag about it, so I figured I'd throw it up there.
This is us helping towns.
Yes.
With the- okay.
Yep, so mitigation grants go directly to towns. I think one of those is a water district.
Yeah.
The NSGP is a nonprofit security grant, so those are nonprofits or houses of worship, churches, temples, mosques. And the Homeland Security grant goes to fire or police agencies. Figured I'd throw that out there.
In last year's budget, there was a list of grant-funded activities, and I think you mentioned that earlier. We didn't get that as part of our first batch of the budget. Is that something that will be coming later?
A list of grant-funded activities.
The HSG.
Oh, the specific projects?
It was part of the emergency management section of the budget last year, so it just was something that we didn't have yet. I assumed it was gonna be
Sure.
added at some
I
point.
think HSGP.
Maybe we can get a list of all the projects for all of these. Yeah,
Have those been selected by MEMA yet?
no, that's what we're waiting on.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're waiting to get the final approval to get it on paper. But we could, yeah, we usually
And
could.
those are grants, the grant-funded activities don't involve a match from the county.
It depends on the grant. Typically, no, there's no match from the county that would impact this budget. HSGP grant there has no match. The NSGP, the county is not party to it. And similar with the mitigation grants. There's a match for those, but the county doesn't pay that, the municipality or the other group does. We have a 50% match for that federal grant listed there, that's called EMPG. Again, that's more than made up for with our actual general funds, so.
The cover page for the emergency management section says grant funding, see last page of section for data on the grant-funded activities of this department. Whenever that's ready, you can just send that along to us.
Yeah,
That'd be great.
absolutely.
Anything else?
That's all I got.
Thank you.
Okay, go to the computer.
So next up is Melinda Fairbrother Dyer. Melinda is our communications director. She is in charge of our 911 dispatch center up in Wyndham. Just give you kind of like the lay of the land where she's located, if you know where the Wyndham Penitentiary or prison is up off from River Road. Melinda's up on the hill on the other side of the street from the prison. So.
Look for the towers.
Where the cell towers are. So, with that, I'll pass it off to Melinda.
My budget, I suspect, might not be terribly interesting because it's literally an operating budget, so as things go up in price, then it goes up slightly. However, I look forward to the opportunity to kind of showcase what your local 911 center does for a few of you, because we actually are your dispatch center. But we also, even if we don't directly dispatch for you, we're still a 911 center in your community. And support your local 911 center's efforts. So in our organization, there's myself, the director, and we have a deputy director, Erin Pelletier, and she happens to be on vacation right now, otherwise she would have been here tonight as well. I've just put our information up there in case anybody ever has a need to contact us for anything. I've been with the agency since 2006. I started out as a dispatcher, then went to supervisor, was an interim deputy director for a short period of time, and I've been the director since 2022. And Erin has been with our agency since 2012, fresh out of school, and has been our deputy director since July of 2024. So there's myself, then Erin, and we have 7 shift supervisors. And if we were to do the math, it takes 5 people to cover 24/7. We actually have 7 for built-in overlap for a number of reasons. One of them is that everybody has vacation time. Another one is that supervising a shift is one aspect of supervising in our industry, but then we've also got continuing education and things like that. So everybody has a shift supervisor role, and they've got additional roles for keeping the operations flowing smoothly. And then we have 28 full-time dispatchers. We don't employ anybody part-time.
You said 28, right?
Yes. Just a little about the next few slides are just some things that we do that are above and beyond what you might think of as a 911 dispatcher, which would be answering 911 calls and talking on a radio. We get out into the community whenever possible to help educate our youth especially, but not just our youth. We get into group homes and whatnot and try to help educate people on emergency services in general. Obviously, 911 is what we do for work and is our passion, but we also discuss the full boat whenever possible. I put this slide in there because sometimes a person might think of a dispatcher as somebody who sits at a desk and answers a phone and writes on paper or what have you, but these are the calls that they're handling. They're getting the screaming person who's involved in the traumatic incident. They're on the radio talking to the first responders who are going to things that are frankly scary. One of these calls, the top left one, was a sinking vehicle, and we were on the phone with the person who was inside it. Just for some perspective. We have a group of people who are dedicated and committed to quality improvement in our agency. So we have 911 calls that come in, we have administrative line calls that come in, we have radios that talk to us, but then we also have moments of lull where things aren't constantly going on. So we fill those times with things like quality improvements. So these are just some statistics for the number of calls that were taken as compared to the number of calls that were reviewed by a group of people. So in the very bottom, I bring that to your attention. It says echo calls that were reviewed. Those are not breathing and building on fire types of calls. So we took 101 not breathing calls this past year. 78, it doesn't necessarily equate to all of the not breathing or all of the structure fires, it's just on call taking, that's what the person said. 78 structure fire calls, and 100% of those get reviewed. We do that for a few reasons. We do that to make sure that our quality is where we want it, but we also do it to give the employees some feedback so that they can hopefully have some closure on, in a high percentage of these, a job well done. These are some different groups and teams that were represented within our dispatch center, and I bring these to your attention because these types of involvements and commitments that people do outside of answering 911 greatly lends to our ability to retain our staff, because they're part of meetings, groups that offer opportunity for change. Some of it as significant as legislative type change, and gets them away from the everyday sitting at the desk. Some of these groups I represent our agency on. Some of them our deputy director does. Some of them are represented and led by shift supervisors. Some of them are led and represented by senior dispatchers. We have an oversight committee that we call the Cumberland County Regional Communications Board of Directors. The Board of Directors is made up of one voting representative from each community that contracts dispatch services through us, one representative from the county EMA, one representative from the county sheriff's office, one at-large representative from the district of each of our county commissioners, and our current chair is the Wyndham Police Chief Kevin Schofield, and our vice chair is the Casco Fire Chief Brian Cole. So we are the Cumberland County Regional Communications Center. In short, people refer to us as the CCRCC. We are a full-service emergency communications center for 19 of Cumberland County's communities and the Sheriff's Office. And then most recently, we partnered with USM Gorham Portland campuses. We are a PSAP for those 19 communities. And what's important about the PSAP language is that means we answer the 911 call and we dispatch for the 19 communities. We operate as a backup PSAP for Westbrook. So if anything were to happen and they needed to evacuate their center, they could come to ours and operate, and we could go to theirs and do the same thing. We recently, last year, partnered with Oxford County in that if they needed to evacuate their center, their radios and whatnot are in our center, so they could come there. The important piece for Oxford County was, as you know, Westbrook is in Cumberland County. Oxford County doesn't have any other dispatch centers. There's just the county. So there is nowhere within the county for them to go, which is why Cumberland County agreed to house their equipment at their cost. They pay for everything. Just some statistics over the years. The 2025 statistics aren't quite fine-tuned yet, so I don't have those as far as 911 call volume goes. And one of my dispatch supervisors today, when she was reviewing to make sure I didn't have any clerical errors, she said, "Is our call volume really going down?" And I said, well, it does wane. But the reason that she asked me that is because the types of calls that they're taking now have really gone up significantly in, I would say, maybe severity. So she's feeling like we're busier because we are really, really busy. We normally look to have kind of a lull this time of year, and it's just straight busy. But it's because of the types of calls aren't necessarily seasonal calls anymore.
Can you expand on that? Like what are like the...
Yeah, so the mental health component, while it may be seasonal, it's pretty steady. Before, we would look forward to this time of year, we'd, if it was snowing, we'd have motor vehicle accidents and stuff like that. But the mental health component has been steady since COVID. And increasing, frankly. This is just a comparison. So this is just PSAPs. So some of you in this room are from communities that don't, your dispatch center is not a PSAP, so you won't see them represented on here. But we are the fourth line down. Just showing in comparison for all PSAPs in the state of Maine. We average, in 2024, we averaged 95 911 calls per day. These numbers are not necessarily 911 calls, but they are calls. So if you look at the community that might be of interest to you, either where you live or where you work or whatever, these are the calls that occurred in 2025 in that community. So the law enforcement calls you'll see in a community like Wyndham are a bit more than the calls in Standish, because Standish is covered by the sheriff's office So that person is responsible for multiple towns, whereas the town of Wyndham has their own police department. So a lot of that's gonna be officer-initiated type stuff.
I have a question.
Sure.
So when the county's budget is allocated to municipalities, is your budget, given that you have specific communities that you service, allocated to them based on this, or is it all just packaged as part of the valuation and how things are allocated?
Do you mean how we charge them?
I'm just curious, if you have a $4 million budget and you have specific users, are they being charged to cover that?
Sure. We're
Directly?
almost
Okay.
there.
Okay.
Here we are.
So close.
Sorry.
So close.
Spoiler alert, yeah.
So you'll see that there's a per capita rate of, so if you look at the town of Baldwin, for instance, in 2023, the per capita rate was $8.27. That is because for the town of Baldwin, we do their fire EMS dispatching, and then the sheriff's office is their law enforcement. Bridgeton, you see a significant increase at $24.52, and that's because they actually have a police department that's 24/7.
But you're doing their dispatch.
Excuse me?
But you're doing their dispatch.
Yes, yes, this is who we dispatch for, and this is what we charge them. Yep. USM is, we dispatch for USM and in exchange for free tuition to Cumberland County employees. There's a few dynamics to what all Cumberland County employees and some family members. And I think I can speak for many of us that has been a nice recruitment and retention tool for Cumberland County. I know I have employees that intend to stay for a certain amount of time, regardless of where life takes them because of the tuition.
And the per capita refers to the population of the municipality.
So our operating budget is 1.9 million. I apologize, 1.9 million in revenues versus 4.6 million that it costs to operate our office. And it's significantly made up of salaries and benefits, and then the operating stuff like the radio infrastructure, maintenance contracts, computers, software, technology, things like that.
So, follow-up question then. So what you shared before with the rates, is that 1.9 million coming in just from those, and then there's the delta of like 2.1 million that is being shared across all municipalities to cover, or how does that work? The reason I'm asking is because I know in Scarborough we have our own dispatch center, so I'm trying to understand how is Scarborough paying towards some of this through the allocation we get from the county, or not?
Yes.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, because that's only 40% covers, the 19 communities are covering 40% of the budget.
Right.
Is that by design?
Honestly, that was significantly before my time, so I don't know if it was done by design or if it's just evolved that way.
Before my time too. I believe it was as a result of a study, what was it, the Kimball
The
report?
Kimball study, yeah.
That was back in 2004, 2005, that looked at establishing a regional dispatch facility, and they looked at how to bring on towns and create a formula that would be equal based on the per capita rate for the delivery of the service.
I see how that would relate to delivery of the service between the 19 communities. I'm wondering about the communities that are not benefiting from the service. Are there other benefits that other communities are getting from the service?
I think largely, I've always been told that there's a carve out for the sheriff's office for their operation. And then it kind of was, when I first came to the county as the assistant county manager, I was told that it was kind of broken up as 1/3, 1/3, 1/3. It was 1/3 communities, 1/3 it was the sheriff's office, and 1/3 it was just general fund allocations. And so how that works out, today. That is how it plays out. I think, as probably time has gone on, that number has gotten further apart because costs and especially wages have kind of exceeded, and probably the formula hasn't allowed us to catch up or gave us an inflationary ability to keep the prices catching up with inflation. That's something that, now that you ask that question, is something that we should probably maybe take a look at.
Okay. Can I follow
Yeah,
up
go ahead.
quickly? Just so I understand, when you say the sheriff's department, I imagine dispatch also sends the sheriffs out to do things, and that benefits the whole county because they work for everyone?
Right.
Okay, so that's what I understand. And where is that represented in the budget? In terms
In
of
this
their,
budget right here.
in their portion of,
No, it wouldn't be a
Wouldn't
separate
be
carve-out. It would just be, it's in Melinda's budget, but it's a consideration. The sheriff's office uses the services of the communications.
Well, I was just gonna ask for clarity, these rates are updated annually, but perhaps they haven't been increasing as much, is that what you were saying, or is it that these rates have been pretty consistent and it's been a while since they've been
The
updated?
formula has not changed. Every census,
Mhm.
the contracts change because the per capita for towns changes.
Mhm.
And so every 10 years, towns kind of hold their breath, especially the ones that are growing, to see what their contracts are going to look like.
I think part of the explanation, or part of the more of a in-depth understanding is, the service that Melinda offers is a far more comprehensive service than some of the local dispatching is. And, one of the things that I've always been cognizant or striving for is the reality of how many more positions would you need to hire if you took on all dispatching for the county, which I think is a more is a savings, if you want to say, if you talk about people hired that individual communities have for their dispatching versus the county, and then maybe go and you can point out some of the differences, which you mentioned last year about, you have the ability to dispatch the nearest unit, not necessarily having anything to do with town lines, and your sophistication of your technology is much greater.
Sure. I wish now that I'd put a map in here just so you could see what our coverage area is, but we have a Gorham Police dispatcher sitting next to the Wyndham Police dispatcher, sitting next to the Sheriff's Office dispatcher, sitting next to the person who's listening to Cumberland and Bridgeton, so the communication in the room is instant. If Wyndham Police says, get me the Sheriff's Office, it's instant, there's no phone call. We're all using the same technology. I would emphasize that I think as a county, we have some of the best technology. And I think Jim mentioned to you that everything's going to subscriptions now. So our CAD vendor is a subscription fee now, and the training that we're able to provide to our staff is merely because of our volume. We're 38 strong and not 5 strong. So we have the ability and the oversight to be able to train people and maybe kind of run more of the business side of it.
So if you got the ability to tell us, and this takes some time, but how much more staff would you need to take on the entire county?
So I would tell you that we could use the Portland Regional Communications Center would be a really good example. I'm getting ready, I think, to show you some 911 statistics. So actually, I guess I already did. So 911 statistics, if we look at Portland police, which represents Portland, South Portland, Cape Elizabeth, they're at 62,000 for 2024, and we, for the rest of, for the 19 communities that we do, we're at 34,677 911 calls. Now, that doesn't represent everything that happens, because that's just the 911 that rings, that's not the officer-initiated type stuff, but their staffing is identical to ours when they're fully staffed. They have 38 positions, just like we do. I think we could get you that answer, yes, but it's not as easy as making it a one-for-one swap, because the town of Gorham used to have their own dispatch center. Law enforcement-wise, they have 14,000 law enforcement calls last year. They, before they joined with us, employed 8 people. We staff 5 people to cover that agency. So in some ways, you're sharing light bills and technology and things like that, so that in and of itself becomes a cost savings, but then you're also leveraging kind of the downtime that I described to you. The town of Bridgeton used to have their own dispatch center. Just looking at their call volume and knowing the impact that they have on our center, the person who dispatches for the Bridgeton Police Department also covers the Cumberland Police Department, because they both have lower call volumes than some of the other police departments. So you can share a person and you can share resources nearby.
So if we were able to develop a county-wide model, I think that, you know, and you share the expenses equally, I think that, you know, the general consensus is there would be some savings. There'd be an increased, we'd get better service for less money.
I'm reluctant to say that we're better. I am very, very proud of our agency and very proud of the support that we have, but I would never say anything ill of another center.
I was very interested in regionalization.
However, yes, I think it is easier. So we have one CAD system. Previously, the town of Gorham had a CAD system. The town of Wyndham had a CAD system. So there's definitely savings when you do those types of things.
For the 19 towns that you support, just curious, like, in the past 5 years, like, how has that changed? Did you start at 10 in 2020 and then add 9, and what is your goal to add more towns, and is that a proactive thing that you guys are trying to build, or is it more when towns come to you and say, hey, we're ready to, you know, leverage the service as opposed to going it our own? I'm just curious.
Sure. So the next item on here were some projects that we did in 2024. And I'm going back in 2024 because we did some really big projects in 2024, but they're projects that we're still kind of bringing to fruition, if you will. One of them is that we renovated our 911 center. So to better answer your question, we have capacity for all of that. We have the furniture for a person to sit at. We have what we need to grow if somebody made the decision to join us for dispatch services.
And that was through ARPA funds you used.
We also replaced our end-of-life radio equipment to a system that does not alienate us or cause somebody else to not be able to communicate on our frequencies, as long as they are in tune with radios to a degree. Our radios are capable of analog. Our system can hear analog, and our system can hear DMR digital and P25 digital, and we did that intentionally to make sure that those that went the DMR direction, we could still communicate with them. And then those that go the P25 direction, which is frankly the only option, or the only feasible option for a county, to go P25 because of the length of, we have 9 towers in Cumberland County. If we were to go to a DMR digital radio system, we'd have to have 9 times 10 probably for towers, which wouldn't be cost effective. Does that help answer your question a bit?
Well, I'm just curious, like, how much have you grown in the past
Yeah.
5 years, say, and like, what are you proactively doing to grow?
Past 5 years, we have not grown.
Okay.
When we did grow, and so that was a previous manager, previous 911 director, they did go knocking on doors and said, for this price, we would be happy to provide you dispatch services. That's not our model. Our model is we are here, waiting and ready if your community decides that that's the option that's best for them.
I want to go back to the allocation of costs with the communities and I understand the sheriffs and general budget. It looks to me like the requested budget was an increase of just over 15%, and the preliminary budget is 14.5%. But the increase in the revenue from the 19 communities is probably closer to 3%. Why don't they rise with the rising costs of the overall program? Why is that being put out into the general community in the county?
I would say that I think that's a great point, and it's one that Jim and I have touched on, but it's built into the contracts to go up the 3%. So right now, I'm getting ready to send a contract out for Community A, because based on when they partnered with us, it's a 3-year contract, so everybody's contracts renew at a different time. So that community, we're able to give them 3 years of what it's gonna be for their budget. And no, that hasn't changed, I believe, since it was, since the dynamic was developed.
So is that because of the Kimball study that was mentioned earlier? The way to get
That is how it
communities
started, yes.
in the door would be to tell them that they would be capped in terms of how much the cost would increase each year?
I don't know that.
Okay. Because the impact on the rest of the community, now we're paying $292,000 this year for a regional dispatch with Falmouth and I think one other town. So we are paying, our amount, but we're also, paying here as well. And I'm wondering whether it's a fair allocation, that's all.
I agree.
I would submit that a countywide dispatch would save us all money. I mean, see some communities might pay a little bit more, but they might be paying what their real costs are. And I think there's some disparities if you go down through this thing here. In general, I would say that there would be some savings.
So are you saying that for Community A, you're about to sign a new 3-year contract and you still can only go up 3% every year?
I'm not saying that I can still only do that, I'm just saying that that's what we've been doing for, I'm gonna say 20 years. It's been the constant 3%.
Can I ask that we revisit the basis for that? I'm sure those communities will be able to pick up a piece of paper and say, no, we're stuck at 3%, if that's the case. But if it's not the case, I think we need to revisit it.
No, we definitely will. And I think, I've been sitting here thinking, typically when we negotiate with our unions, you just have to look a few years back, and it was, you could give a union a 3, 4, 5% COLA on an annual basis, and you'd be in the ballpark. I don't know if those who have dispatch facilities, dispatchers are like law enforcement agencies. The salaries for these classification of workers, they have gone up significantly in the last 4 or 5, 6 years. And that's probably one that's just pulling that gap further apart. We probably should be talking that the standard 3% no longer works. Because of that. We negotiated a 1-year contract with our dispatch group last year just to collect one contract off the cycle with the other 3. And we will be negotiating probably towards the end of this month, if not February, for the July 1st start, for a 3-year contract. So that will give us an indication how to build out contracts over the next number of years. So it is something that's worthwhile, and we appreciate you bringing that up.
And New Gloucester thanks you for subsidizing our.
You're welcome. Well, I think that's my question, and I think Karen was trying to get to it too, which is like, if I have to tell my community that we're paying money towards this, like, is there some benefits that we're getting, even if they're secondary, tertiary benefits, that we can say like, hey, this is good for the county, it's good for the community. You know, if I'm driving through Gorham and call 911, I'm gonna get support. And so again, I'm just trying to figure out how to kind of express, while we in Scarborough and some other communities, it sounds like, have our own dispatch that we're paying for, that we're paying 100% for, like, what is the benefit for that additional charge that we're getting from the county that helps people understand that there is a benefit to you. It may not be direct all the time, but like, again, if you're driving through Gorham, you're using their dispatch center. So I don't know, like, are those?
In the past, the benefits could be perceived as, we have an emergency alert system that is countywide.
Okay.
So the other dispatch centers have logins to it. And I would be candid with you that we're in a transition right now to a new software, but it does the same thing and has the same reach, if you will, which is all of Cumberland County. It knows the county line and won't let me send a message past that. However, that's under our umbrella, we pay for that program, but all Cumberland County agencies leverage it. That would be one piece of software that we all use. I think the other indirect, and my hope would be that this isn't something that needs to be leveraged, but it is how we've positioned ourselves in our center, and that is that if your center is a PSAP and for some reason can't answer 911, we are the rollover for all of Southern Maine. Which became important when people had staffing crises, and some are still in their staffing crises, to know that at least if something goes awry here, there is somebody that it's gonna roll to, and it's us.
Yeah, and I know there's been a lot of staffing crises around dispatch in particular, so I'm just curious, like, how is it in your department? Are you guys pretty solid? You have good retention? You're not seeing a lot of turnover, or?
Yeah, actually I have a slide in here to show you. So when I became director, that was my, everything plays into it. However, my main focus is retention, because I think a lot of money gets wasted with the turnover rate. It's cheaper to, beyond just the financial gain, it's cheaper to keep your people and provide an environment that they want to be in. So that is one of the things that we work hard at, is the retention piece. The year that I took, was awarded this position, we had 12 people that left in that year. So that was in 2022, 2021. Now, we had one that retired. I think for 2025, we had 5 people that left. Without going into great detail, when I look at the reasons why they're leaving, though, they're regular reasons now. They're not, I hate working here.
Okay, that's good.
Yeah.
That's positive.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I actually was just talking to somebody the other day who said, it's actually, it's a place that I can't leave now. And I said, well, great, we've done our job. So in our renovation that we did, this was the old dispatch center. And we moved all of our staff down to our EMA partners downstairs. I don't know if some of you may have been down there before, into the bunker. We moved them in October 2023, and then this is the new center. Pictures don't necessarily do it justice, so we would invite anybody at any time to come in for a tour. But we look forward to this kind of being the home of our dispatchers for the next 20 years before it would be due for another renovation. And as Jim stated, ARPA funding took care of this for us, because during COVID, when people were close contacts or maybe sick but not too sick to physically work, we had them in portable trailers in our parking lot so that they could maintain distance with porta potties and all kinds of stuff. So the top picture here is what we call our build out. That's a room that when you close the door, you can flip a switch, put it in negative pressure, all of that air goes out through a COVID rated filter. So a person could actually be in that room with COVID and not share it with the rest of the room. And then the actual main dispatch floor, everybody is in excess of 10 feet apart. Another project that we did was we were able to get some congressional earmark funds to the tune of $1 million. So when we upgraded our radio system, the county owns 3 frequencies as far as from the dispatch perspective, and it's the sheriff's office primary, it's County Ops 1 and County Ops 2, which we highly recommend and keep promoting that everybody, even if we don't dispatch for them, program these into their radios, because they're for all of us to use. So this would be another perceived benefit. If you're coming to, your community's coming to Wyndham to help with a police incident, we want you on this frequency, talking to us. The Ops 1 is our P25 frequency. The $1 million helped us purchase 98 mobile radios, 540 portable radios. So the picture that's to the left and on the bottom, that's a mobile radio. So that's what you would see in a police car or a fire truck or an ambulance. The one on the right is what we call a portable radio, which you see on the person's hip. We purchased 348 P25 licenses. So those were existing radios that were capable of all of this. They just needed the P25 license. And then we had all of these radios programmed in the same way. So our 19 communities can talk to each other on Ops 1 and Ops 2. Our challenge has been getting other communities to be able to communicate with us there, but it's just kind of showcases how making a move like this and having a manager like Jim Gailey, who had the foresight to say we need a large chunk of money to purchase the equipment so they can actually use this infrastructure. So that was a really great project that we were able to do, and we're still enhancing this and working towards. Yes.
Yeah. Well, this just triggered a thought. Like, I know in Scarborough we have to do some massive update to our radio infrastructure, and so I'm just curious, like, given the infrastructure you guys have, do we, and I don't know if this is a fair question to ask, do we need to do that, or can we leverage your infrastructure in order to meet the demands and needs for our radio capacity? Or I don't know if I'm asking the right question. I don't fully understand what we're doing. I just know the police chief shared that in our budget this year, there's going to be a huge CIP because we have outdated infrastructure to support communications and things like that.
I'm not sure that I could completely answer your question, but I could tell you that this that I'm showing you here is everything on the left is a community that has a radio system that's compatible with ours.
Mm-hmm.
And in layman's terms, that means if I wanted to become the dispatch center for Lincoln County, I just need a software upgrade to do that because we have the same equipment.
Mm-hmm.
The folks on the right are future compatible. So right now, our systems don't integrate with just a software upgrade. We would need a major hardware upgrade.
Okay.
However, everybody in red I dispatch for. So I'm telling you that in order for me to join my radio system with Wyndham, for instance, they would need to upgrade their hardware. And then we just need some software licensing to do that. And we can actually hook our radios together. They can talk on my Ops 1, my Ops 2. I can talk on, we have communication with all of these people. They just can't easily join together.
Okay.
Scarborough's not up here.
Yeah. And so I don't know what our hardware software is, but I'm assuming we'd be like a different color.
Yeah, so.
You get in the screen.
Yeah.
Portland's not here either. So those radios, we can't talk on.
Okay.
And there's no future plan for us to be able to communicate with them. to my knowledge. I would ask those questions.
Okay, I will.
So our radio infrastructure, so we got the mobiles and portables, but our radio infrastructure itself, what we got from the million, by giving all of these radios to the communities that we dispatch for, we got a commitment from them to improve their infrastructures in the same way. So we're gonna give you this $1 million worth of radios, but we all wanna head in the same direction. And the direction that they and we chose collectively was P25. So those places that we dispatch for are all the red ones. They're all moving, if they're not already there, in a P25 capable direction. So their equipment will be software ready for the upgrade.
So New Gloucester's not showing up there, what does that mean?
So I didn't put it on here yet because I haven't talked to the New Gloucester Fire Chief, who, you have a great fire chief. I hope you guys know that, like, he's top notch. I believe he's gonna be on the future side, really very near future. I just didn't wanna be assumptive, but he is having those conversations with the radio shop.
I've seen it on the budget request, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
What our radio infrastructure gave us is what's on the right, and I won't bore you too much with this map, but on the left, you'll see there's some white patches. That means we can't hear you, they can't hear us. On the red, we were able to improve those white patches and make them red. You will see there's still a spot, and it's Scarborough. And it's not because we left Scarborough out for any reason, it's just that we, meaning the agencies that we dispatch for, don't frequent Scarborough. So when we were looking at what towers to do our upgrade in with this particular enhancement, that didn't stand out as a need. It's more frequent that Scarborough would come to one of our communities like Gorham or Wyndham versus one of them going to Scarborough. And I think it's because Scarborough is probably more inclined to leverage like a Westbrook or Portland for whatever their needs are. So our ultimate goal is, right now we listen to 35 frequencies. So my staffing, I told you, is the same as Portland, but Portland's call volume is greater. Well, Portland dispatches for 3 communities. I dispatch for 19, and they all have their own radio. Some of their public works has a radio, the fire department, police department each have their own radio. So in order for my 2 ears to listen to 5 radios, I've essentially set our staff up for failure. I'm asking some of our fire dispatchers to listen to 5 radios with 2 ears. So if I'm talking to Cumberland, I can't even hear Yarmouth when they call me because that's radio communication doesn't work that way. So our goal is to reduce the number of frequencies that we require our staff to monitor. And in order to do so, we need to have like equipment. Okay, so this was the retention statistics that I shared with you a little while ago.
It's trending well.
It is. I would like it to be more bold, but
I think your facility has a big draw. I've been there. It's amazing. And I think people like their work environment. It says a lot too.
they do, yep.
How much of the turnover is due to the fact that people can't travel or can't live close to the facility? Like, are we seeing, just thinking of the housing crisis and workforce housing, is that ever a big reason why people choose to
Probably not
work somewhere else?
a big reason. In those numbers, I know 3 people that left to join a center that was closer to them.
Okay.
We actually have a lot of staff now that live nearby. I live in Auburn and I work in Wyndham, and I'm one of the ones that lives the furthest away.
Okay, that's good.
That's it.
That's good.
Any questions?
Thank you.
The sheriff's department puts on a community police academy, and quite a few people from New Gloucester, 5 or 6 of us, attended that last year. And the dispatch center was the most amazing part of the whole program. It was wonderful to see it, and a great presentation, and really inspiring. So thank you for what you do.
We didn't used to go out in the public, and the reason that we do now is because I feel very passionate about the fact that I didn't even know it existed until I knew it existed. And people usually just stumble upon it. They might even grow up in a firefighter home or a police home and don't really even know where the stuff starts and how involved it is and how, so our goal is to have a staff that love what they do and aren't scared of it. And we have had some times in the past where we had people that were kind of scared about what they were doing, which is fine because it's not for everybody. But the commissioner says it's fun to walk in the room now because you just feel that everybody likes to be there.
I think the training's also, I mean, besides liking, it feels like the training, it's so professional, and the training and the care that you put into the staff is so apparent. And I think, people just want to keep learning when they're in a field like that, and I think you give those opportunities too.
Well, the calls that we get from the public are too important to leave up to chance. So we try to make sure that we're leaving it up to highly trained people.
When we were there last winter, there was a bill being considered to change the classification of your dispatchers because they were secretarial and not frontline workers, and I believe that passed. Is that correct?
So, there is a lot of movement on that locally and nationally. I actually, and I think I probably will dig in to that as a project a little bit more in my future, but I didn't have to dig in a whole lot because it became obvious to me when I took on this role that I didn't have to convince the county that the work that was being done there was important. I think the county does a great job of showing our staff through benefits and pay and support that they're not just anything, that they're valued employees. And if Jim comes to visit, nobody's scared that he's walking in, and I think that's a really great, a great sign.
You're not intimidating enough.
Thank you.
And again, if anybody wants a tour ever, we love it. Don't hesitate to ask.
Thank you, Melinda. Appreciate it. Next up this evening, we have District Attorney Jackie Sartoris. Jackie, oh, she's still back there. Okay.
Good evening. I don't have the exciting pictures here of people being prosecuted. I thought I would.
That's on national news.
So, I'm going to start off with something of an apology, because we are not a revenue neutral activity. Prosecution is, of course, what we do in the district attorney's office. We handle all adult criminal cases other than homicide. We do not handle some administrative law cases. For example, most natural resources law, we don't cover. The Attorney General's office handles homicide, natural resources cases, insurance fraud. I mean, they have a special kind of cohort of cases that they cover statewide because we really are such a small state population-wise. But in Cumberland County, we cover many misdemeanor and felony level cases. I'm going to show you. There we go. It's right over here. So this will show you the felony and misdemeanor cases. If you look for Cumberland County, we're down there right after the colored shaded box for Aroostook, then comes Cumberland. The reason I'm showing you this particular piece of information is because there's been a really big shift for us since 2019. Yes, that's the pandemic. The year before the pandemic in Cumberland County, felony cases were at 900 or so. We are now at 1,334. This was from December of 2025, so just a month ago. And that's an increase of about 50%. So 150% of our pre-pandemic cases are felony cases, and then our misdemeanor cases, we've actually whacked at over time, and we're at about 113. And the total cases, we have about 122% of our pre-pandemic numbers. That's a significant decrease. We were at 153% of our pre-pandemic numbers when I started as district attorney in January of 2023. But we have the same number of staff. So our staff have been handling at one time 1.5 times the cases that they trained for that we would normally expect. That has gone on for years. So when I started as district attorney, we actually had a little bit of a problem retaining staff. We were down, I think, 6 staff at the start of 2023, or over the course of the first couple of months of 2023. So let's talk about those staff numbers. We have, this is just our budget. We have a total of 25 county staff, and then 7 what are called part-time, but what they really are, 6 of those are law students who we have as interns. Cumberland County has a storied intern program. We are the only program in Maine which has been around for about 30 years. Most of our prosecutors currently, many of them started as interns in law school. So we continue with that program. The county, we now offer 2 ways that people can be reimbursed. Either you can get your credits through Maine Law, which typically is what most people prefer to do. You have to work a minimum of 15 hours a week to be an intern. Or you can be, I'm gonna get this wrong, an extern, or maybe I have it the opposite way, but one way or the other, you can either be paid an hourly wage, which is not a lot by Portland standards, or you can get your credits through Maine Law. So we have 6 of those folks a year. 15 hours a week is what we tell them. We often find our interns are putting in more time than that 15 hours a week. They screen cases. We've limited the number of cases now that they're allowed to screen. We really are looking for quality rather than quantity. And they actually argue cases in court. They do motions, all the way through to trials. We make sure that every intern has the experience of having at least one trial before the end of the year. So it's a great program, and as I said, most of our prosecutors have come up through that program, many of them. We also supply intern law student graduates to many other prosecutorial districts all over the state. Our interns will end up either at the Attorney General's office, in District 4, Kennebec. We've had them all the way up to, I think we've had one in Aroostook. So it's a great program to help people get into criminal law. 25 full-time staff, but that doesn't include our prosecutors because those are paid for by the state. So we're paid for by the Attorney General's office, my salary and all of my prosecutors. We have 20 prosecutors. So it is an office around, somewhere a little under 50 people. And I'm realizing when I looked at this budget that it doesn't currently include our federal grant staff. We do have a prosecutor who is now paid for through a federal grant, and we're about to hire a sex assault investigator. We received a $2.5 million federal grant last year, and that is to test every eligible sex assault kit in Cumberland County. It will take us 3 years to do that work. It is ongoing now with our first step, which is an inventory. Everything is paid for by the federal grant. There is no county match. It is frankly a wonderful grant for us to have received. We're really excited to be pursuing that work. We expect there to be around 500 cases, 500 kits that are untested in Cumberland County. Not all of them will be eligible for testing under Maine Law. Only a proportion of those kits are considered to be eligible because you must be a reported kit, meaning you've made a contemporaneous report to law enforcement for those kits to be considered to be tested. The payment for the kit testing is all coming from the grant as well. Kits will be tested by a third party tester for DNA evidence. There's no way the Maine lab could handle, I mean, they're already frankly really struggling to keep up with the staff they have, and the physical resource they have is really the problem. The laboratory itself is too small for adding more staff. So we'll be doing that with third-party testers. That's been done all over the country. Those are then uploaded into the CODIS database, which is a DNA database, and typically they see, and we expect this to be true in Maine, that there are substantial links to unsolved crimes, which are also truly problematic in nature. So, violent crime, gun-related crime, burglary, robbery, homicides have all been linked to these kits when they've been tested in other states. We're the first county in Maine, the first place in Maine to do any of this work. So again, and the county has just been tremendous about supporting the work and also really helping us with grant administration. So I want to say that when you think about what Cumberland County does, we could not do this work, I don't believe, in many of the other counties in Maine, because Cumberland County is so professionally run and has staff who really know what they're doing with federal grants. It has enabled us to apply for this grant and know that we can do a very good job of administering it. So that's so to get us back onto our actual budget, even though prosecution is not a revenue neutral activity, I'm going to tell you right now that mostly our costs have remained static. We've seen a few increases, obviously salary and benefits, you'll see that in our budget. Translation services have increased a lot in Cumberland County. That's true elsewhere, but Cumberland County in particular, we see about, I believe there are 47 languages that we've got available. We are seeing a real increase in the number of languages and translation services that we've needed. We've now seen a bit of a decrease this last year because ICE activity means that we're seeing citizens, residents rather, who will not come to court. And so one of the downsides of the activity that we're seeing is I believe that we're seeing people go underground in terms of not being willing to report crimes, not being willing to work with court services any longer. I personally can tell you we've had a number of victims who've walked away from in the midst of criminal cases because they fear being picked up by ICE, being identified in the court system. However, I expect those translation costs are going to remain. We also have a lot of citizens where English is not actual citizens, where their language is not English as a first language. So those translation services we continue to need. Our conference costs, oh, sorry, go ahead.
Those translation services, are those shared services that dispatch also uses when they need translation support, or like how does dispatch?
They're services which are provided through the courts.
Okay.
So they're not provided through dispatch, they are translation services provided through the courts for every court-related activity. So I only do criminal cases. I've dabbled a little with civil in this last year, only to try to put people on medication for mental health issues. But by and large, we are weapons restriction orders are also civil, and my prosecutors handle those. Basically, though, we're doing criminal stuff, but the courts are dealing with civil stuff. They're dealing with family law. They're dealing with, all of those things. The courts need to provide translation services for. So those, if there's a case, for example, when we have to have a translator for a victim issue, we cover those costs, but not dispatch, courts.
Okay.
Most of our work, in fact, is really governed by the courts. So I'll give you a silly example. On a snow day, what matters to me isn't unfortunately, whether or not the county closes, whether or not the state closes. It's whether or not the courts close, and they are the third branch of government, and they can decide whether or not to close independently. So we've had these kind of interesting, challenging times. I'm expecting one tomorrow as well, when it's clear that someone's going to close, but the court is always the last place to close because they then have to reschedule all of these court appearances for defendants, for victims, for translators. Prosecutors, the assumption is we're going to do whatever they do, which we will. But it does get a little complicated. So I want to race through though, because I know you guys are going to be over time here soon. Revenues, in addition to the federal grant that we've received and which comes in, it's a pay-go, basically. They pay us as we've done the work. So that is what we're gonna be seeing in our budget is federal grants. Restitution, I wanna call that out because we have a pretty substantial shift in restitution over the last year or so, and then restorative justice fees. So I'm gonna walk through each of those. The federal SAKI grant, that stands for Sex Assault Kit Initiative. That's a $2.5 million grant paid over 3 years. That pays for 1 prosecutor, the ADA is assistant district attorney, 1 sex assault investigator. We are about to hire that sex assault investigator. In fact, the job description for that was just posted by the county. Third-party testing. And then finally, once the third-party testing has been done and we have results, we'll be looking at investigations and prosecutions for those cases, which is why it's a 3-year grant. These grants typically have a 1-year cost-free extension because nobody gets it done in 3 years, although they keep saying they're 3-year grants, but almost everyone applies for a 1-year cost-free extension to get the work completed. And then after that, there is also the possibility for additional grants to continue to do sex assault investigations. Part of the outcome here for us will be an improvement in the way that we investigate and prosecute sex assault cases. We expect to be kind of the shining example for Maine. We are the only place in Maine that will have done this work, which will lend itself to developing best practices. For me, it was a really big reason that I wanted to do the work I do as district attorney to begin with. Do you have a question?
You mentioned investigative work, and I've seen enough TV shows. Your investigators, are they funded by local police departments or are they funded by your department?
So generally speaking, investigators are all funded by local police departments. We have 1 investigator in-house who's a domestic violence investigator. That work is funded by the county. It started from a grant, as I understand it. It is fully funded for 1 investigator for just domestic violence. And this grant will provide us with 1 investigator just for sex assault investigations. That is, and then every other investigator are the detectives, investigatory staff in each of the police departments, and of course, the Cumberland County Sheriff's Office. So we rely on their investigations and their reports to charge our cases. There are these 2 kind of special areas, and the reason for both domestic violence and sex assault cases, frankly, to be funded by district attorneys, within district attorney's office, not by, but within, is because traditionally those crimes were underreported, underinvestigated, and underprosecuted. So what we found is relying on kind of a more traditional approach to law enforcement was not going to get us to a place where domestic violence or sex assault crimes were adequately investigated, and that's in part because our statutes didn't keep up. So domestic violence only became a crime in Maine in the 1990s. And that was thanks to, in large part, to a South Portland legislator, Lois Galgay-Reckitt, who was one of the people who pushed very hard for domestic violence to become a crime. And you see that around the country. Marital rape was not illegal in every state in the country until just a couple of years ago. So what we find is that crimes against people who have been traditionally thought of as disadvantaged, in these cases mostly women, domestic violence and sex assault, although not exclusively, those crimes have lagged behind in terms of prosecution and investigation, which is one of the reasons why the feds have provided traditionally grants to make sure that people who are traditionally not getting justice can get greater justice. So we're, as I said, very excited about this. I think most of our law enforcement agencies have really caught up with modern times, right? But when you think about it, the 1990s weren't that long ago. So it takes a while. I mean, you still hear people who will say, if so-and-so was the subject of domestic violence, what did she do to deserve it? In sex assault cases, unfortunately, you still see that question. I mean, frankly, in some of the police reports, they'll call out for some of the federal training. You know, these aren't ancient police reports. Well, they'll look at police reports and say, okay, here is where the police officer, for whatever reason, had some unconscious bias and chose not to believe the victim. So that's the kind of training that we'll be doing as part of this program, is to make sure that people are really understanding that that old bias, we aren't even aware of it sometimes, but, you know, things like, what was this person wearing? Why was she out late? You know, would you really go out with a stranger, right? Those are the questions that have tended in the past to get asked, when the question for us is, did this event occur as the victim claimed, and what is the evidence to support it? So we're really excited about this work. I think it honors the victims and also our community's need for basic public safety. It turns out big surprise, people who've committed a sex assault are very likely to have committed other crime. So guess what? You know, these are not necessarily nice people often. So the fact that we'll be doing this work will allow us to link to other unsolved crimes, other acts of violence, and it is really, I think, one of the most important things we can do to protect the community. So restitution, I need to call this out because we had a fabulous change here. I'm looking over at you, Teresa, for that in part. When I became district attorney, I was really hoping that we could allow restitution payments to happen on a credit card. It's something that a lot of other counties have done. Cumberland County had taken a while to get there. We got there, and we've seen restitution payments shoot through the roof, which is terrific. It means more victims are actually getting the money back that they are owed after a court action where part of the court order is, okay, you know, you're convicted of blah, whatever it is, criminal mischief, theft, burglary, restitution is ordered. Well, we've really lagged behind until this last year and a half in restitution coming through. And that's because the county adopted this change, allowing for credit card payments, and we've seen a really significant increase in restitution going to victims. So I'm excited about that. We do not, and we're not proposing, we do not have a restitution clerk, but we do pay a little bit of overtime for someone to do that work on top of her regular trial assistant work. That's currently how we do it. In the long run, I believe we are gonna need a restitution clerk. Cumberland County is the biggest county in the state. We are one of the only counties at this point who don't have a full-time restitution clerk. I think we'd see payments increase even more, but the position's not gonna pay for itself. Restitution payments go to the victim, and there's no way for us to kind of recoup those costs if we do eventually add a restitution clerk.
Can I ask a question about that?
Sure.
So the restitution is ordered by the court, but the court doesn't administer it?
That's correct. Yep. I mean, it's our job to deliver that part of the justice is the restitution part. That's just how it's always worked.
I will try not to have too much of my own personal experience, like, affect anything here, but I was an AUSA in New York doing forfeiture and restitution. So I have a little bit of background about how that works in the federal system.
Yeah, you do. And the court does something about this?
Yeah, you went to the court clerk to pay any fines or restitutions.
So no, we get, so the payment goes to the district attorney's office. And we then have to make sure that that payment goes and to the county, obviously. We have a special fund set up, which is just for restitution. Yeah, it goes through the DA's office.
And then
No cut.
Is that like a safeguard, I guess?
But it's listed under revenues, you say there's no cut.
Yeah, there's no, it's not really, it's a pass-through. It's a pass-through. It's just a pass-through. It's not a revenue.
That makes sense.
It's just, you know, it looks like money, but it's not. You know? So it's, but I mean, we're really proud of the fact that we've seen this incredible increase. I mean, we have victims who have been paid nothing, and then suddenly, because the defendant can put it on their credit card, it was hard before to pay restitution. You needed a money order, you needed cash. I mean, this is so much better. This is how people do business these days. So we're really excited that we can make these payments to victims.
There have been no probation officers that defendants have to meet with when, you know, to make sure they're meeting their obligations to the court?
Probation cases, we don't know.
But no, nobody who sees defendants who are not incarcerated but have obligations to?
So if you make payments through probation, that goes through DOC, not through us. So we don't handle those. I don't know if I'm answering your question.
I guess I was wondering whether the court has personnel that are supposed to keep up with defendants after they've been sentenced to make sure they are meeting the obligations that they've been sentenced to.
No, if someone is falling down on their restitution payments, we have to file a motion with the court to bring them in. In fact, we had a kind of remarkable case my first year of someone who owed enormous amounts of money to this couple for like 15 years. And one of my prosecutors saw it come in as a non-payment again, did, you know, a bunch of Google research and realized the guy had all kinds of properties and motor vehicles, and we ended up for one day, it was actually a nightmare, we ended up for one day, the court ordered the vehicle seized and held by the county. I'll never forget the experience of the county that overnight, like, how do we guard this thing? We don't want it, we just want the money. And that the judge then went back and modified her order to allow, to really force him to have to pay us the money. Yeah, we take these pretty seriously. Unfortunately, we don't have a lot of tools. We gotta go to court, get a new order, do the homework to make sure that, we can say this person really has assets. A lot of people are good about hiding their assets when it's a large amount. But we take it seriously. My prosecutors really, actually frankly, enjoy restitution cases in some ways because they're not, they're not some traumatic, horrible, they might be a traumatic, horrible thing that happened originally, but here you are just dealing with money. So it's, I think, kind of a break from some of the other work they do. Restorative justice, that's the last thing I'm gonna hit on because it is a change. So we've been paying since 2022, $40,000 for restorative justice services. This was set up, you notice the date, 2022. This was actually a really smart move by the county, working with the former district attorney to try to move cases that could not move in the docket any longer because of COVID. And so restorative justice was a way to put those cases in into a place where we know the results are very good. Restorative justice tends to give a result where we see less recidivism. It is more meaningful for defendants. You're trying to get the right defendants for these cases. About 40% of our defendants historically under criminal world, 40% of our defendants come in and they're only gonna see us one time. We don't know who they are, right? You're trying to identify who are these people who we're only gonna see one time. But we know that restorative justice has a lower rate of recidivism in part because it is a more meaningful encounter early on in somebody's criminal career. Maybe what they need is to be told, hey, this is not okay, not by the judge in a lengthy court process, but in that kind of community setting that restorative justice allows for. So I was kind of skeptical initially about restorative justice. Spent a lot of time looking at the research. It works. We are now trying to greatly increase the number of restorative justice cases that we do for appropriate cases, lower level misdemeanor, non-drug related cases. We know that people, if they're addicted, they're not really fully present for a restorative justice session, so we're not gonna ask them to do that. We want it to be meaningful. We're talking about usually low-level property crime, something where, maybe somebody's shoplifted and run, somebody who's very early in their criminal career, somebody who's under 25 years old and did something stupid. And a lot of us have done something stupid at one time or another. So this is a way to let people have that encounter, restorative justice encounter. We want to greatly increase that, but we don't want to spend more money. So what we looked at was, we did a pilot project this last year to see what could we charge defendants for their restorative justice session that would pay for the restorative justice session or pay most of the cost so that I can increase our use of it without asking county taxpayers for more money. We're gonna be the only county in Maine which is using restorative justice at the level I expect us to. We're about to go out with an RFP this week, in fact, asking for people to propose how much do you plan to charge for restorative justice, and then we'll enter into a contract with them, provided it passes muster with the county commissioners and the county manager. We'll enter into a contract. We expect defendants will continue to pay a fee. Right now, they're paying $150 a fee for our pilot project. For those people who cannot pay, and people, by the way, fill out court paperwork to show whether or not they need court-appointed counsel, whether they're indigent. We're just gonna take that paperwork and say, okay, you can't pay, your fee is $30. Pretty much everybody can pay $30, and we want people to have an investment in this restorative justice program. What we've found is over 80% do not end up with any reduced fee because they don't qualify, because they're not qualifying for court-appointed attorneys. So 80 to 85%, no reduction in fee, they pay $150. Just one person end up with this mid-level fee of $75, and the remainder, and you get a reduced rate defense attorney if you fill out that paperwork, but just one person actually qualified for that. And the remainder, like I said, about 15% were the reduced rate. So we expect to greatly increase our use of restorative justice. I do not expect that will cost the county more than we currently spend on restorative justice. But we expect the cases to go from that maximum of 144 1 year, which was a couple of years ago, to maybe up to 800 to 1,000. And I think that's a very appropriate use of restorative justice for Cumberland County based on what I've seen other counties, not in Maine, doing. We're gonna be the only county in Maine, though, that is charging a fee. I think that's appropriate. And we'll be back next year to tell you how that's all gone. My expectation based on our pilot project is that it will go well. That's it. Those are my highlights. Any questions? Yes.
Just one, restorative justice isn't necessarily financial payment, could be a contract with doing something for a community?
Oh, like community service?
Yes.
So restorative justice is just the encounter that you have with a kind of a docent who walks you through the process of, usually if there's a victim crime, we have the victim, they interview the victim says, here's what happened from my standpoint, here's what I want to see from this person. And then they have a session with the defendant, and the defendant says, here's what was happening for me that day. Maybe I had too much to drink. Maybe I was angry about something. Maybe, I ran out of money and decided to drive recklessly because I was upset. Whatever it was. And then ultimately for the victim crimes, they are brought together and there's a dialogue. What happened for you? What happened for you? Victim, what do you want to see out of this? Very often in the course of that dialogue, which can go anywhere from 1 or 2 hours, the victim will say, I now understand this person better. I'm not angry anymore because they've apologized, they've taken ownership, whatever. Sometimes the victim will say, I want 20 hours of community service. I want you to have to go and meet with people like me who you've harmed. Whatever it is, the victim gets to shape that outcome. For the low-level restorative justice sessions, there is the restorative justice provider, the person who's leading that conversation. There's just the defendant and a community surrogate. The community surrogate represents community values. It's usually a Zoom conversation, so everybody's on Zoom, so it doesn't, there's no meeting place, there's none of that. You're on Zoom, the community surrogate, you listen to the defendant say, here's what happened that day, and the community surrogate says, this is how this harms the community, right? You tore at the fabric of basic orderliness. You scared people. Whatever it is. Maybe you beat somebody's mailbox into a pulp and that person felt violated. They don't want to be here today, but you need to pay them back, right? And that's how that dialogue goes. They usually take less than an hour, those lower level dialogues. And at the end of those, you can pay restitution or do community service. There can be addition. For something like low level, a shoplifting, where there's no loss, right? The groceries went back, the Walgreens thing went back, there was no money lost, but you committed a crime. Very often at the end of that, the person says, I can see why now I shouldn't have done that. And perhaps the result there is nothing further happens. That's that one time. You do it again, and we're not gonna have that dialogue again, right? Because this is about taking accountability. If you take accountability, but you go off and do it again, that tells me maybe you really aren't taking accountability. And now we're gonna have the kinds of consequences you get in court, a fine, a fee, a conviction. So restorative justice works well at diverting people away from criminal conduct, not for everyone. So we're gonna give people that opportunity the first time. As I said, the recidivism rates for restorative justice are better than traditional criminal legal processes for many people. The reason for that is probably because restorative justice happens a lot faster. The typical criminal stuff is gonna take months and months. And by then, you have made all kinds of excuses about why it was really okay what you did, right? Where with the restorative justice approach, the low-level, very early on stuff, again, these are people without mental health issues, without substance use disorder, to be perfectly clear. And I'm not persuaded that 40% of my current clientele is gonna fall into that category. I am seeing, I do the mental health docket for Cumberland County, and I am seeing such an increase in folks who have underlying mental health conditions. I'm not sure we're gonna get to like 40% of anything. And I will be clear, even once we have a full-on restorative justice program, our costs are baked in, right? The number of trial assistants I have, the number of prosecutors I have. It's not like I'm gonna be able to drop us down to a point where I can say, oh, we don't need so many people right now. If anything, my people need to spend more time on serious felony cases than they currently have with the glut of misdemeanor cases that we deal with. We really, that would be my goal, is to really spend more time on those serious felony cases.
You kind of started with the huge increase in cases. Do you feel like your FTE right now are staffed appropriately to address those cases?
Oh, I'm glad you asked that. I would say, yes, and I'm gonna tell you why, because we were down those 6 people my first year. Some of that was retirement, but some people really didn't wanna do that work, and the caseload was overwhelming. Thanks to the way that the county's staffing goes, the way that we put those job descriptions out, the way that they're getting those interviews in, the quality of the people we're getting. I have people now who are able to do such speedy work. My trial assistants, honestly, are remarkable. They really are. They are so fast on the computer stuff, and I think that that's another thing, right? I've got people who are all over in terms of our birth dates. Some of us are less capable of picking up new technology than the folks who are coming out of college now. I've also seen the educational credentials just go really through the roof for my trial assistants. Some of them have not just bachelor's degrees, but even master's work. Now, we're not gonna hold on to those people forever, probably, but they're able to pick up the work so quickly. They're doing just incredible work. And we are down from that 153% to about 122%, which is also, it's like the old, tale about the people who had too many people living in their house. So the rabbi tells them to move all of the animals in. And then once they evict the animals, everybody feels like they have plenty of space. I think that's kind of how the caseload worked for us. It feels better than it was. It would be great to get back down to 100%. Thank you for asking.
I have a follow-up to that. So with current state legislation that is going to be driving likely more housing creation, I suspect a lot of that's going to likely be in Cumberland County. So
Yes.
how are you preparing for what could potentially be an influx of new growth? And is there a strong correlation between population increase and caseload increase and how that's going to impact your office?
That's a great question. I mean, I don't want to think about population increase resulting in more crime. I will tell you that overall, crime statistics are down nationwide. Maine has benefited from that. The one area I would call out as a concern there is the use of guns. We are seeing more normative use of guns in the commission of crime, and that is the one place where, I think just the sheer availability of guns means that we've got crimes that at one time would have been committed, without a gun, and now it's like, road rage with a gun. It just feels as if with a gun has become the kind of new thing that we see more of. Generally, crime is down. That's helped us with this whole pandemic problem. We have a very high standard when it comes to charging crime. Obviously, it's beyond a reasonable doubt. And I think we work really hard to make sure that what we charge, we can actually prove. I do think we can tighten that up as well, frankly. We are often seeing ourselves struggling with discovery issues. That's where you have to produce all the evidence in a timely way to defense counsel. And I will tell you, the source of that really is overwhelming amounts of digital evidence, and it is incredibly difficult to keep up. I saw a report, which was a 1983 OUI recently. It was 7 pages and that included the mugshot. Now for an OUI, an operating under the influence charge, I'm gonna get hours of videotape. Hours of videotape, one OUI. The need to review all of that evidence is, we don't have that time. There's nobody who has that time. And that means sometimes you can get sandbagged with surprising things at the last minute when you're finally taking a case to trial. So I would love to, I would love to increase the number of prosecutors I have. That is set by the Attorney General's office. That's where I feel the biggest blockage is for us in doing a better job, a faster job, and a more comprehensive job with our cases is with the numbers of prosecutors we have.
Speaking of all the digital evidence you're getting, do you have the amount of storage that you need for it, for digital storage?
Excellent question. We have not, actually, and that's not because of anything the county's doing wrong. It's because we just keep bumping up onto those storage limits. Those costs have gone up a lot. We are now moving to a different kind of evidence program